Hello, everybody. This is Susan Heaton Wright and Nick Simon from Superstar Communicator. We are delighted to have you here today. This is either as a live stream or more afterwards, it is made into the Superstar Communicator podcast. If there is anybody watching now, please dial in or let me know that you are that you've actually dialed in, because it would be lovely to hear from you and to ask questions. Today, I am absolutely honoured to have a fellow from the Professional Speaking Association, Ben Afia. And he is a consultant to FTSE 100 companies who's had his fill of cold corporate organizations treating their employees and customers like robots. So he set on a mission to make businesses more human. He realized that when you deeply connect with your culture and brand, you give people the experiences they yearn for. For almost 30 years, he's been trusted by companies like BP, Vodafone, and Eversheds to change their culture, build their brand, and make staff and customers happier. And he has just launched his book, The Human Business, to show us how to do it by aligning our culture, brand, and experience. So please welcome Ben Afia.
Thank you for having me on, Susan. It's an absolute joy.
Oh, so this all sounds a little bit touchy-feely, and yet you're a communications and language expert. How on earth do you make businesses more human?
It does sound touchy-feely, doesn't it? And sometimes I wonder, are there sort of CEOs or executive teams thinking, we need to make our business a bit more human? I don't think that's what's on people's minds. But what is on their minds, and I know this because they tell me, is increasing complaints from customers, falling customer satisfaction, falling net promoter score, the measure of customer service, falling sales, decreasing loyalty, decreasing referral, customers referring to their friends and bringing people back. So there are some pretty hard measures that organizations are facing, and the answer to that, to my mind, is to make the business more human, because we are, as customers, just fed up of dealing with robotic organizations, aren't we? We're fed up of being treated like robots, dealing with robots in an impersonal way, as if we're just another number. I mean, we can probably all resonate with this, can't we? So we don't want to be treated by robots, treated like robots. We want a decent customer service, a decent customer experience when we deal with an organization, don't we? We hanker after it, and we're quite prepared to pay to receive that level of service. But very few organizations seem able to deliver it. The other thing that strikes me about it is that when we're less than human, what is happening internally within the organization is inefficiency as well. So the humans within the organization want to be working more in sync with each other more effectively. And that plays out in the experience that they can give customers and the way that they communicate.
Oh, this is absolutely fascinating. You've told us why businesses need to be more human, but how do they do it?
Well, this is what I write about in my book, and it comes from 30 years, nearly 30 years in business and 20 years consulting. And those last 20 years, after I left Boots, the chemist, where I worked first on the brand and the brand personality and the tone of voice, the written and spoken tone of voice. Since then, as you mentioned in the intro, I've worked with all sorts of organizations, companies like Vodafone, Aviva, Google. And universally, these large organizations struggle to be more human and to make the connection between their employees, their culture, and the systems that are delivering the service, their brand, which is that story that we're telling to customers, and the experience that customers have at the end. So the book is all about culture, brand, and customer experience, and how if you align your culture with your brand, if you line up what you're promising to your customers with your organization's ability to deliver, you can give that customer experience that people are, yearning for. And that's the essence.
Great. And your caterpillar model starts with culture or employee experience, but shouldn't we start by understanding our customers?
That's a really good question, Nick. And in my book launch last week, I was giving a talk, and that same question came up. When I was working on the model, one of my strategist friends looked at it and said, "This model's the wrong way round. Surely we start with customers." So this has come up a few times, but it's deliberate. It's deliberately that way. So yes, of course, we need to start and end with customers, because our organizations, our businesses are not making money unless we're making customers happy. They're who pay, they're who pay for our products and services, and they pay our wages and our shareholders. So yes, of course, it starts and ends with customers. However, everything that we deliver to customers comes from people. It comes from our people within the organization. It comes from the people and the systems and the processes that we've designed. So the service is a symptom of the culture. And that's why I start with culture and employee experience. I start with the people, because that's where everything stops. Just to give you one small example,
Yeah.
I work a lot with financial services organizations. So like insurance companies and banks, they have a duty to treat customers fairly, and to speak plainly, and and increasingly now with the new consumer duty, to put customers at the heart of everything that they do, customer outcomes. And so what tends to happen is, in regulated environments like that, you tend to get a lot of legalese or compliance speak in the letters that go to customers, because companies are worried about getting fined. They're worried about getting things wrong and getting fined, or attracting, the wrong kind of attention. And so the legal and compliance language tends to have more weight than maybe it should, because ordinary humans and customers don't understand that language. So quite often that language can be alienating. It pushes customers away. It really gets in the way of the relationship. So this is what I mean by getting into the culture and your people, in order to free them up to express genuinely to customers and make that human connection.
And yeah, I was interested in the kind of old saying of customer is always right, but there's that. How would you say getting the right balance between having an emphasis of customers and having an emphasis of treating your employees well? How would you say that getting that balance right is important?
I would say you need to treat your employees well so that they can treat your customers well, because happy employees lead to happy customers. If your employees are happy, they can't deliver a service that customers are going to pay. When you go into John Lewis and you speak to somebody and you really get time and attention from somebody, you get, well, do you still? I don't know. And you really get that personal attention. Whereas, or actually maybe a different example would be Richer Sound. So you could go to the tech department the TV department in John Lewis, and you'll get professionalism and expertise. You go to Richer Sounds and you get an altogether different level of passion, which is to do with the ownership structure of Richer Sounds, and the way that Julian Richer looks after his people and nurtures them, and has people working with him for all of their careers. It's extraordinary. So I was also listening to there was a Channel 4 podcast interviewing I can't remember his name, Timpson, the boss of
Oh
Timpson,
gosh, yes.
who is famous for recruiting people who've been in prison, people with criminal records. And he was absolutely passionate about people, and he absolutely believes that if his people are happy, his job is to make his people happy so that they can make customers happy. And he says the happier store owners are the most profitable. The happier store owners are the most profitable. And yet, in most large organizations, we're looking at the numbers and we're going, well, it's all about the numbers. It's not.
Yes.
It's about the people.
Now, we talking of people, we have some messages from people. So first of all, Kate says, Excited to be here. Congratulations on the book, Ben. And please feel free to ask questions. And then we've got Trisha, my mate Trisha. We need to arrange that coffee. Hello, looking forward to the session. And then lovely Mel that we both know, Ben. Thrilled to know your new book is out, Ben, and looking forward to today's session. So please feel free to ask questions. I'm sure that you will have some great questions, and I'll look out for them. So it's really interesting that you say that businesses are always thinking about the numbers. How can we cut costs? Oh, we won't bother about customer care. We've got the money we've got the money. We can delay delivering some good service. What are your feelings about that?
There
Oh,
is
no,
this.
sorry, Serena has also said, do you know Serena?
I do indeed. Yeah. In fact, I sent her
Oh,
the link this
great.
morning. Good
That's
to have you linked,
suddenly
Serena.
came in. I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I think that our organisations are run by accountants. Challenging, I know, but actually, how many FTSE 100 chief execs come from a marketing or operations customer service background? A lot, I believe, come from accountancy. And so this numbers bias and this shareholder focus is what most of our large organizations are driven by. And that's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit like the reporting cycle hamstringing the behavior of the organization. And and I think there seems to have been this focus on results, shareholder value and results, and a business's prime responsibility being to shareholders, to return shareholder value. And I just don't believe it's true, because the evidence suggests that organizations that nurture their cultures deliver the profitability. The challenge is that we've got to deliver returns, and those returns come in numbers. They don't come in emotions, if you like.
Yes.
So it is a challenge, and I think there's a couple of other things. So a lot of organizations are driven by their, our hiring consultancies, some of the big consultancies who can come from a number or strategy driven background often. Some companies are in love with consultants. They have consultants left, right, and center. And so that leads to a certain bias. But also tech companies. So all the investment at the moment is in software, is in tech. So when I go to another insurance example, I went to a customer experience, an insurance customer experience conference recently. All of the sponsors are tech companies because that's where the investment is. So the focus within organizations is on implementing a new tech. Let's get that CRM sorted, provide our people with the right information, have it all to hand, and then they can respond to customers. Well, no, not if you don't train them, because there's an increasing trend, which is if we're increasingly digitizing customer service and moving to
Yeah.
encourage people to look after to self-serve, as is known in the trade. And while that absolutely is powerful, what it means is that when you get calls into the contact center, they're increasingly they're the more difficult problems to solve. So your people, your customer service agents have got more complex challenges, and they need the training and the emotional intelligence to be able to handle those more complex situations. Customers in distress, customers having problem, and they want to feel empathy from the organization they're buying from.
I've got another
Yes, it is,
Thank you,
Serena. It's
Serena.
all your fault.
I think that that's a really interesting point, that there is all of this push for digital and for digital marketing as well. But we know, Ben, and Nick knows as well, that it's a combination of marketing and building relationships. It's not exclusively using social media to increase our value, because it's a combination of things.
We are still human, and we still appreciate
Yeah.
human relationships. or at least the appearance of humanity. Now, I'm not against digital at all.
No, me neither.
And I'm very keen on AI. In fact, I can't wait for AI to be able to write with empathy. So I've been talking to a telecoms company. They have several thousand people in contact centers in India. And one of the challenges that they have is sometimes understanding us passive aggressive Brits.
Yes.
Sometimes we're a little bit too subtle in the way we complain. So if I say, that's a little bit annoying, as a native Brit, you probably sense that there's a complaint brewing there.
Yes.
But to a non-native, somebody who isn't a native Brit, they may go, doesn't sound like a problem. That's where I think AI can probably can be phenomenal for interpreting and then crafting responses that an agent can tailor, and getting the grammar right and all the things, the nuances that humans pick up on and go, actually, I feel like I'm being dealt with by a human. So I'm really excited to see where that's going. It's not there yet, but that's an exciting frontier.
Yeah, I suppose that's down to the language that you use in different cultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that tone of voice.
Yeah. And as you know, I'm passionate about tone of voice. It's crucial to making that connection with customers. And often it's the tone of voice that can go wrong. Somebody posted on LinkedIn, one of my friends, Thomas Coles, actually posted, I think he got a message from a company, and it said, you may contact us through whatever the details were. And the may really triggered him. Just one word really triggered him. And it's because it sounded official, it sounded distant, it sounded like the company was distancing themselves from him. Just one word, you can contact us through, feels much more engaged and personal and direct.
That's interesting. What are your thoughts on this, Nick?
Yeah, I can't remember. We interviewed someone who was a language expert, and he explained that different cultures use different languages, not just the language, but the way they communicate with those words. So, for instance, there was a flight that was delayed in landing, and to speak to the German residents of the flight, they gave a direct informational set of information explaining the situation, whereas they explained to American people that they're, just enjoy the ride, and using that different kind of tones. So it'd be interesting. Would you say that it would take a little bit more time to be able to tailor AI responses to different people of different nationalities and cultures?
I can remember the sample, and I can't remember if I heard it on your podcast. But I think it was the
Michael
German.
Gates.
Yes, yeah. Michael Gates. Yes, indeed.
And this is a great book, as we know.
Yes, indeed. I love Erin's work. Yeah. In theory, AI ought to be able to understand that better than us humans. And I guess that's about cultural context, isn't it? I think the Germans on the flight needed the more rational. They wanted the detail, responded to the detail. The Americans actually responded to the emotion, and they just needed to be encouraged that everything was fine. So yeah, I don't know where AI is going to go in terms of that, but for me, it's all about understanding your audience, understanding different audiences culturally, but also individually. I was watching a TikTok this morning from The Economist, and they were talking about data, looking about how British voters are likely to vote based on their demographics, and how that has shifted since they did the same survey last year. And to me, this is about understanding different audiences and what different audiences need. That nature, that is the essence of more human business, because we want to be acknowledged as individuals, as not acknowledged as human beings. That's all we're looking for, is just that recognition. And if there's been a mistake, it's just a sorry and an acceptance. Yeah. The problem is that we don't hear that very often, do we? We don't hear a genuine empathy for our situation as an individual. And very few organizations, I think, are very good at managing that and doing that. I bought a new mower, and it's dropping grass. So I emailed the company yesterday, and I got a response this morning saying, in quite official terms, saying refer to your dealer. I'm like, but you're the manufacturer. Why can't you just help me with this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
immediately feel put out. Now I've got to take another step. So that's a brand that is not nurturing. It's not thinking about the long-term relationship and thinking, well, how can we put this right so that we have a customer for life? I would see that
And
complaint as an opportunity.
Do
yeah,
you think
then
oh,
sorry.
sorry.
From
Do you
my point of view, are you guys?
do you think that that part of this, you mentioned about figures and accountants, that they are literally working to the next quarter.
Mm.
They're not even thinking long term.
Yeah. I think it's a challenge, because if you truly want to develop empathy and humanity within a business, it's a long-term program. And so if you think, well, who might be focused on who might be investing in the long-term development of the culture of the organization? Marketing, chief marketing officers are famously in post for a relatively short period of time, so they are thinking about the next campaign or the campaign after that, perhaps, and their D&AD awards or or whatever. Your chief operating officer is firefighting, customer service, all the issues that they have to deal with, and the huge, they have the bulk of the workforce. They have thousands of people in large organizations, and that's very complex. Chief people officer, you might go, well, they are absolutely should be focused on culture, but quite often they are in a tailspin, trying to nurture culture, but actually responding to the day-to-day crises, recruitment, working from home, hybrid working. There's so much going on in our organizations. So arguably only the chief exec is the person who has a long-term view across all of those roles and is invested in the long-term development of culture. Everybody's firefighting their own patch, and they're not always joined up. So when I go into an organization, I'm always trying to encourage a conversation between the chief people officer, chief brand officer, chief operating officer, to generate momentum for a program. And we might tackle immediate needs. We might start in customer service and looking at customer letters, but then we might go to the chief people, the people team, and the culture, values, and behavior frameworks and that kind of thing. So we have to pick our projects and go at them one by one, achieve some wins in a small area so that we get commitment to then do further work.
Yeah.
Because a big program of change just in the current climate, I mean, who's taking that on? Who's got the money?
Yeah. This is all kicking off now.
Ah.
We've got Magdalena says complaint is a gift, like
Absolutely.
that. Then we have Serena. To be fair, a great CFO should be looking at predictive metrics. I pay a lot of attention to future predictions around complaints, engagement, etc., as these predict future client loss. Really interesting point. Do you have anything to comment on that? Ben?
Well, I think Serena is maybe one of the more enlightened CFOs.
Well
I
done,
don't want to.
Serena.
I don't want to do down the accountancy profession. Many of my friends are
No.
accountants, but numbers are a particular way of looking at an organization.
Yes.
Emotions, feelings, humanity is just harder to define, isn't it?
Yes.
We might say, okay, well, what defines our culture? What defines the way that we are human as an organization? And you might say, well, it's the values or it's the behaviors. Now, in the olden days, you would have a competency framework, which would be the way of measuring whether people are exhibiting the behaviors you want to see. But those can be quite crushing, actually, of morale. I like to encourage a behavior framework approach, which is about looking at the positive behaviors and exploring what an organization is like at its best, and then finding a way of helping people to be more at their best more of the time. Because when we are measured and constrained as human beings, we rebel, don't we? We don't like it. We don't like to be controlled. So what I'm trying to encourage is, how do we free our people to recognize their strengths at their best and free them to be more of that more of the time, and to support each other in that.
Then we have very interesting conversation. And Serena then adds, Should I pay a lot of attention to predictive measures, e.g. today's complaint or lower engagement can mean a future month client loss?
Yeah. She's saying that she does pay attention, which is the right way round.
Good.
And I suppose most large customer service teams use Net Promoter Score, NPS, which comes from Fred Reichheld, probably 20 plus years ago. And NPS tries to measure the likelihood to recommend. So there's one number from, when you get those customer surveys, when you get to the end of the call and they say, how likely are you to recommend us from 0 to 10? And the idea is that your 9s and 10s are your net promoters. They're the people who are likely to mention you to your friends. The danger zone there is actually the kind of the 4 to 8. It's not actually your bottom people, it's your middle people. It's your middle people who are moderately happy, but are not happy enough to recommend you to their friends, because you only really inspire long-term growth by making customers so happy that they're prepared to recommend. That's how you get word of mouth. That's sustainable. That reduces your marketing spend. It means your customers are doing the work for you. So if you focus on making those customers blissfully happy, so happy that they'll come back and they'll bring their friends with you, you have long-term sustainable profitability.
Another one from from Serena.
Yeah.
NPS is typically hard to get clients to do regularly. I agree. I mean, certainly I get fed up when I've got something from Amazon. How well did we do? Well, you just put something through
Constant
the door.
surveys. Yeah. So we suffer, I think, survey fatigue. And my view is, just because we can survey everything in customer service doesn't mean that we should. And I think that's where a lot of companies, I got an Amazon delivery yesterday and I get an email saying, how was the delivery? Well, it turned up. I mean, what do you want me to say?
It's true.
And actually, that's not the most important thing to measure. The most important thing is when I have a problem and I get that solved, then that's the thing to measure is, did that person make me happy as a customer? So
Yeah.
happy that I'm going to come back and recommend you to my friends in future.
Did I feel loved and
Yeah.
cherished by you?
Mm. And I know
Nick,
Amazon is quite contentious. I have friends who won't shop at Amazon, but they have done something extraordinary for service. They have
yes.
created a level of service that unfortunately has left many of our brands scrabbling to catch up. But it's not just about fast delivery. When you have a problem, although it's hard to find the contact us details, they do hide it. But actually, when you talk to somebody on chat, they generally solve it. And quite often I find they'll just refund and say, you don't need to return it to us, which is
Yes.
wasteful. But from a customer happiness perspective, it's made my life easier.
Now I've got something from Trisha. Organizations need to help their employees thrive. The CET and senior managers need actions added to their performance to make them accountable for building an inclusive culture with a sense of belonging.
I'd argue that this is the most important role of a leader, in fact.
Oh,
So
you need to get together, Trisha, Ben. You'd get on so well together.
Be happy to. I mean, one thing I interviewed around 30 leaders, mainly in larger businesses, to get a sense of the landscape. What are the big issues on leaders' minds right at the moment for writing my book? And I heard some very consistent themes. And one of those is that many leaders are struggling with the hybrid working. I know companies that are telling people to come. I live in Nottingham. I used to work for Boots, and Boots have recently said everybody needs to be back in the office most of the week, and it's causing not riots, but it's causing a lot of fuss. And there are other organisations, companies that I've worked with. I was working on a back to work policy for one of my insurance clients, Many Pets Insurance, cat and dog insurance. And they, at the time, this was just post lockdown, they were talking about only requiring people to be physically present 4 times a year. Some teams would need to be more, but everybody could broadly work from home. So you've got very divergent policies, and that may have changed over time. Leaders are struggling to grapple with that, but there is one answer. It's to have empathy for your teams, to be your team's cheerleader, their coach, their confidant, their trainer, their encourager, and to enable them to do fantastic work. Because when people at home, working at home, feel recognized as individuals, exactly like customers, then they're in a better place to support customers. So for me, leadership is about developing that culture within the team and recognizing how that fits within the wider culture of an organization.
Nick, I interrupted you. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was actually going back to Amazon and the changing communications between, the old sort of before my time or during my younger years, television and that kind of marketing and customer service within, I guess it would be telephones or something like that, going into a shop. And then the change between that and now the internet. How would you say that companies have changed their approach and focus over the years between that kind of transition?
That's quite hard to see because we've had the internet for, is it 30 years now? It's been a while, and so its influence has been felt increasingly. We still have contact centers, we still pick up the phone, but a lot more has gone digital. So I mentioned self-serve is the kind of industry terminology. So, and that's recognizing that, as a customer, if I can find an answer to my question online, I'd rather do that more quickly, or most people would. That's not exclusive because that can exclude people who are not as digitally savvy.
Yeah.
So there is a problem there, but that in theory should then free up time for the people who are on the phones to then show greater humanity. I think the problem is that through COVID, we have fewer people in the workforce. There are fewer people. It's harder and harder to recruit. So most companies that we're dealing with now are struggling to have fully staffed customer service teams. And so those people are really stretched. And when you're hammered by calls and targets, it's really hard to show that empathy and humanity. So I think we need things to balance out. But post COVID, that has definitely been a problem for larger organizations, that it's just harder to recruit the number of people that you need. And things have shifted towards an employee, the employees hold the cards. One of the things that I picked up in my interviews, I was talking to a senior vice president of sales for an organization. He said he's got, immediate post-grads joining his team, and their expectations are just very different from the Gen Xers in leadership. They are arriving on day one and they're expecting a performance contract in place, a development plan, and they want a promotion and a pay rise in 6 months. When I entered the job market, I expected to graft for a few years before I'd I'd achieve any of those rewards. But there's more choice as employees, and so that is a big problem for organizations, is finding enough of the right people. And then, of course, you've got the investment in training, which is extensive. And if you've got high turnover in the workforce, sometimes it might feel like it's not worth investing in. But of course, that's a catch-22, isn't it? If you train people, they're more likely to be better at their jobs and therefore more happier at their job, in their jobs, and serving customers better. But you have to make that investment in the first place. And if you don't invest, then they go somewhere else that will.
Now, in your book, you talk about appreciative inquiry. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciative inquiry is sort of core to my process. When I was working at Boots over 20 years ago, and I was working on language, looking at the brand and the language, I knew that what we were doing was trying to make change happen within the organization. But coming from a marketing background, I didn't really have a toolkit of change approaches. 10 years ago, I had some training in appreciative inquiry, and that changed my life, actually. I was due to go to Vodafone's contact center in India the week after the training. And halfway through, I realized that I needed to change my approach. I was going to go in almost with a clipboard to assess. I was going to sit with people, listen to their calls, evaluate as the classic consultant might do. And I realized that what I'm doing there is I'm shining a spotlight on people, and that makes them behave differently. So are you really then seeing the behavior in its true sense. What appreciative inquiry does is it changes that sense of inspection, of problem solving, of trying to spot problems and find solutions to them. Appreciative inquiry turns that on its head and says, what happens if we start by starting from our strengths? So we get people in interviews and in workshops telling stories of times that they've been at their best at work. And when we tell these stories, we re-experience some of the endorphins that we felt at the time of that best past experience. So then if I've got a workshop of people, we get them talking about those stories and looking at the themes, the things that they valued in common about those experiences. And universally, we have similar things that we value. The stories that people tell are always times of connection, of empathy, where the team has had each other's back, they've supported each other, worked together efficiently, and they've been able to support customers as a result of that internal cohesion and empathy. So you get people identifying themes and finding that when they're at their best, they're really very good. So to my mind, what this tells me is that the intelligence, the brilliance that you need to transform your business is already there. It's already amongst your people. You just need to set it free. And that for me is what appreciative inquiry does. We hear these stories, we gather these themes. Those themes then give me the clues. So I might be working on writing values or writing a behavior framework that we've already mentioned, or I might be working on the brand strategy. So personality, the vision, the mission, those kinds of things. Quite often those can be quite bland in their language and they don't really resonate and connect with people internally. Well, the way to get them to connect is to use language that comes out of these stories of times that that people have been at their best. When you hear those stories and you get a unique form of language that cuts through the usual business speak that we have in these kind of structures. So rather than being platitudes stuck on posters on the walls, you have things that are deeply held and deeply, deeply felt. And that is then huge encouragement for behavior change. So I find it great for team building. It's great for bringing a group of champions together to make change happen within an organization. So if you want to transform your customer journey and look at all the touch points, let's say you're a bank. I worked with Aldermore Bank a few years ago, the mortgage business, and they sold through brokers, but their end consumers were people like you and me who have mortgages, who mortgage our houses. And they had a long customer journey, lots of people who had individual points of contact, lots of underwriters, compliance people, legal, all of these teams. Appreciative inquiry enabled me to bring that team together to imagine the ideal customer and broker experience. And with them imagining that ideal experience, you can then use it to go, well, what things do we need to focus on in order to make that a reality? And they know what they need.
Yeah.
So I provide input, but they create that change from within. That for me is what appreciative inquiry is all about. And that's why it's an immensely human approach.
Brilliant. We've got a comment from Kate. Taking a strengths-based approach is so powerful, whether we're working with an individual, team, or whole organization. Thanks ever so much for that, Kate.
Yeah, I just build with that. It's if we start from strengths rather than, so I can remember I mentioned competency frameworks. Years ago, I worked at Evershed Solicitors as a marketing manager, and I think have on my wall the competency framework. I was obsessed with this thing because what the competency framework told me was this is how you need to behave in order to progress, and I wanted to do well. So I wanted to be a model employee. But the problem is, it was couched in quite extreme HR language, almost legalistic in places. And so it actually felt really constraining rather than freeing. And it should be a freeing thing. And it had this approach of compensating for your weaknesses, working on weaknesses rather than just focusing on your strengths.
Yes.
In my early career, it always felt like I was trying to compensate from my weaknesses rather than building on my strengths. What I've been
Yes.
able to do in the last 20 years or so as a consultant is just focus on my strengths and get help where I have weaknesses. And that career-wise and performance-wise, I think is much more positive.
Are there any more questions? Before we go, I'll look out to see if there are any questions. Ben, do you want to share a little bit about your book and how people can order it?
Yeah, so The Human Business, How to Love Your Customers So They Love You Back, is available now on Amazon. You can get more information on my website, which is benafia, benafia.com/book. So I've got a little bit more about the book there, and you can get a link through. But if you just search for Ben Afia on Amazon, you'll find it.
Brilliant. Nick, do you have anything else to add, or does anybody have any comments before we finish?
No, I've learned quite a bit about customer service. So yeah, thanks.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. This has been an amazing conversation that we have had, and thank you very much for everyone who's contributed to the conversation. Kate says, reminder, are
Yes,
signed copies available direct from you?
of course. We can
And
arrange.
Mel says, awesome, Ben. Thanks very much. You're getting the love here coming from everybody.
Fabulous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. This is what Superstar Communicator is about, having these great business conversations that help us to be better communicators. And thank you so much, Ben, for your time. So this is Nick and Susan from Superstar Communicator. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.